Hi, this is Jeff and this is Photoshop Advanced Layers. Okay, so in our last screencast we talked about how we can use layers to isolate an item from a picture or our content from a picture and actually edit it discreetly. In this tutorial though, let's talk about how we can actually use layers and the options within them to edit our photo. So what I'm going to do is that first thing I'm going to do over here is I want to duplicate this layer with my rows in it. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to layer and I'm going to duplicate layer. I'm going to call this rows 2. Alright, so we have a background with our layer in it, with our rows in it, and we have a rows 2 layer with the rows in it. They have identical content in each of them, but we're going to do something a little bit different with the layer above here, rows 2. We're going to go up and select the blending options, and I'm going to select one of my favorites, which is the linear dodge add. Notice all of a sudden everything kind of became funkadelic. This is one of the cool things to play with. All these different blending modes do different things with color values and or properties in the data of the layer. So it's kind of cool to play with then opacity or transparency on top of that and see the cool dynamics we can get. Notice that's what it looks like with none of that content from the rows 2 layer applying, but as I scroll through rows 2 here and start turning the opacity on, I kind of see a whole different layer of detail that's made possible by the blending of that linear dodge add layer above it. So I'm just going to leave it about like that, just to give you an idea of like that's one kind of way that you can actually edit the content just within the layer. So let's actually try a different setting real quick, just to drive this home. But I'll flip to another one that's very popular. I'm going to call this one Hard Light. And notice it kind of does the inverse the other did. If I go over here, though, and go to 0, notice our picture's just back like it was. But as I crank it in, I start to see, as the transparency comes up, different data details that come forward from the photo that didn't come forward before. Now, what's kind of cool is that is true only for different values on each and every one of these blending options. So you can do a significant amount of blending layer work and actually do editing of your photo right within the layer. Okay, another cool thing we can do with layers is we can use the multiply setting. This is really great for whenever I have line art because I can actually use it to paint kind of through the white space here. And we'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. But it's a really cool tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this layer to multiply. So notice I've got my lines layer and I've got it set to multiply. We're going to add a layer and it's going to come up above, but I'm going to drag it down here and we're actually just going to call this paint. Alright, now watch what happens. I'm going to make sure I've got some blue here. Okay, we've selected some blue. And I'm going to paint. And notice that I'm actually able to see the black lines above the rest of the blue. But even though it appears to be solid white, I can see through the white. That's what the multiply tool does. It lets me actually make that white space transparent, and so that only the black lines come through. So I can actually paint this character now and actually work with the line art with actually out having to cut around all the layer and clean out all this and make it transparent. It actually views the white space as transparent. And if you do it and work with a ton of layers over time, you can end up with something a lot like this, or eventually like this. So let's close that out though for a moment, and let's notice something else that we can do here in the layers palette while we're at it. Notice when I had all these layers with all these different eyeballs going in this layer in order to paint this piece and this character, we ended up creating some folders, and we would do that down here by the folder tool actually. Lets us organize pieces. So for instance, this one is organizing the eyes. If I go here and I turn the eyeball off, notice that the color goes away that we would normally see in the eyes here. And I'm going to go here and go back, and it goes on, goes off. You can kind of see how that whole parented in structure for the folder there of the layers lets us control that whole section of layers. We can do the similar thing here for the hair. I'm going to turn the, if we notice it and expand it here, we can see all the hair layers, but I'm going to actually turn the eyeball off next to it and it disappears. Same deal. So it lets us organize when we have many, many layers to have folders and be able to turn whole portions of layers on and off together. Okay, I think I want to show you a couple more quick layer options that are helpful when you're producing content. So one of the things I'm going to do here is that I'm actually going to go back to our selection, and I'm going to load a selection, and I'm going to select the pink flower new, and I'm going to say OK, and that selects our flower again that we had before. So I've gone back to that save selection that I had before on this, and I'm actually going to hit edit, and I'm going to hit copy here. And then I'm going to flip over here to another file entirely, and I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to hit paste. Notice it's actually automatically put my flower on a different layer in front of the rose here. If we want to do it multiple times, we actually could do that. I can do edit and paste again, and there's another one. I can do edit and paste again, and there's another one. Notice there's 3 of them in front now, each on its own layer, each side positioned. We can do all sorts of things with that, but let's say I want everything then to be one flat composition that I want to take into something else, or I'm finished with the file and I want to render it out as a flat file. Well, there's a couple options we've got on that. I can actually do layer over here, and I can do merge down, and notice it takes and puts 2 of the flowers now in one layer. I can do layer and merge down again, and now all 3 of them are on their own layer. But there's also another option. Let's say I had many layers, like I did with the drawing just a little bit ago, and I actually wanted to merge this whole thing into one flat file. Well, then we could actually do layer, and we can actually come down here to flatten image or merge visible. Flatten image will flatten everything pretty much. Merge visible is just what I'm looking at right now. So right now, if I look over on the right hand side, it's just these 2 things. If I have more things, this might be a concern, but I'm going to do merge visible. And now I have one flat layer that has all my pieces in it. So that's just another way that we can utilize layers to manipulate content. Alright, so let's talk about one last set of advanced layer tools. So I'm back here with my isolated flower in its own layer, and I'm going to double click on that layer. And notice we have this whole new set of options here that we can actually play with as far as blending and layer options. But I'm going to close that for a moment. I'm going to say OK. And so that we can better see what we're doing, I'm going to add a new layer here. So I'm going to go down here and add a new layer. We're going to drag this down beneath our cutout flower, and we've got layer 2 there. And then I'm going to come over here actually to the paint bucket, and we're going to make sure we've got layer 2 selected, and I'm going to fill that with white just for right now. And then we're going to come back up to layer 1 here, and we're going to double click, and we're going to look at the layer options. And we're going to go through these real quick. Notice that I can do bevel, I can do contour, texture, we can do a stroke, which is like a strong outline on everything. We can do an inner shadow, we can do drop shadow down here. We can do kind of a lot of fun things with this. Drop shadow and inner shadow are really great for, and stroke as well, are really great for text options, for instance, doing text effects. Outer glow can be fun as well. But one of the things that's also cool here is that we can also do a color overlay. So let's say I was doing an outline of shapes or something like that, a very specific shape found in nature, and I would do a color version of it, a kind of color cutout for it. We can do that. We can also do a gradient overlay, kind of a stylistic cutout that we could also do. So this is just some additional options that we also have, but one of the great things about this is it's non-destructive. I can hit OK, come out here, and yes, it kind of looks like that, but notice the real content is still there. And if I want this to go back like it did, all I've got to do is double click, unclick everything, and all my data is still there. So it's a non-destructive way of handling that. So I think that pretty much covers advanced techniques for layers. We'll see you in the next one.